to the Creative Impact Day. My name is Lisa Lang. I'm the Director for EU Policies and Affairs at EIT Climate Kick. We are a happy member of the United Nations Innovation Hub, UGIH. Thank you everyone for coming, especially to the team who has made all of this possible. And also just to put it in context, why all of a sudden we are talking about creative industries, they might feel like a little bit like the new kids on the block. Well, we are making the invisible visible because we are in a time where we just realized that we are not fast enough and that we have to change people's hearts and minds. And it doesn't matter how much technology, money, and policy we throw at them, they seem to not want to change. So the idea is that when we look and say, like, who creates change, who inspires and moves people, and then we think about music, movies, fashion, storytelling. But it also means it's like climate change brings all of us together because it doesn't care about politics, borders, because it affects us all. That also means we all have to work together. So in that context, what we've started from last year onwards is that we're simply opening the doors to the culture and creative industries because they were there all the time, right? You know, you touch my clothes, literally. We just watched a movie. I mean, quite frankly, movies like Antarctica and Don't Look Up have done more for the awareness for climate change than, frankly, the EU Green Deal. So we need narratives, we need inspiration. What we need is hope in a way how to get out of this. And it starts with together, and it starts with talking to each other. So what we're doing here at UGIH is like we are creating a platform where we bring people all across the industries together to start talking and then go for solutions together. So welcome to just another historic gathering. Here is the beginning. And we are starting with a series of panels. This is the first one. We will dive right in. And then we will have several sessions afterwards where we're going to cover all different angles and sides of creative industries. Also, we have brought a lot of newbies to COP because you might have noticed when you're a COP veteran, you kind of like tend to meet the same people over and over. We're talking about the same problems and solutions, and we're a little bit stuck. So that what we need is diversity and different angles and different pushes. What we are simply just doing is we are bringing different people in and explain them what we are trying to do. And also face uncomfortable questions. Like, what are we really doing here? Where are the solutions? Because what the issue here is that we have systemic handbrakes. We need to change systemically, but the systems is prohibiting that. And one of the issues in all of the conversations we had since last year, we started a Culture and Creative Task Force where we have very uncomfortable conversations. And also we are bringing people in who are questioning and challenging us. And one of the issues which have come apparent is with maybe for people who have been going to COP and have been involved in climate change for a very long time, there is a huge blind spot. It's so obvious. But like for the people who came in, they were always like, why are you not working together? And they were like, what do you mean with you? I mean, like, COP is about politics and policy, but like we are in the industry, we are in the trenches every day. We are getting asked, what are we doing? So then we realized, like, maybe we just should have exactly a panel about that question. There is a huge divide, a systemic divide between industries and policy. And it feels so absurd why we're not getting together. So we just decided we are just throwing some policy and industry people on a panel, and the door is closed. You can't run away now. And we're doing this live. Hello, Internet. So I'm not going to introduce everyone individually because that's what the panel is, the slide is for. Also, that gives you a great opportunity to use your social media on your own. Please make pictures and share them. I want to dive right in. Here, big flag, systemic issue, industries and policies don't seem to work together. You are all industry and policy representatives. You're dealing with this every day. What is your reflection on it? Do you see the blockers? Is that one of the issues you're working with? I throw you right in, Alison.
Thank you, Lisa. I think you've hit the nail on the head. We don't talk enough and don't talk together enough. Actually, I've learned more in 5 minutes talking to Andreas about digital product passports than I would have actually reading about it on a website. I represent local government, and I suppose our role is to translate national policy, which is translated from European policy in our particular context, down to the local level. And I think a lot of the time we're in the trenches around technical issues, around cycle lanes, around building construction, greener, and we don't actually take time to think about the creative alternatives. We've actually done a lot on food and used food as a vehicle for those climate conversations, but we've never actually done something around fashion, clothing, that we all wear every single day. So I do think from the perspective what we're doing wrong is not talking enough, not actually strategically sitting down and ourselves being more creative and connecting into the creative vehicles that are out there and that is part of our culture and that everybody understands. You know, when you talk about where did you get that? And I do think, particularly for women, you like to have something new, but when you do want to make a more informed, sustainable choice, you don't have the information. So I think the second thing, and again, it's something that industry can link in with local governments and local government can link in with industry. How can we educate our citizens around consumption, where products come from? Are they sustainable? How do we make them more sustainable? How can we then maybe be more accelerating our circular economy in textiles and fashion? So talking, I think, is the start, and constructively putting meetings and groups together that will last long term and develop a plan and policy on that.
Thanks for that. So I'm going straight into the counterpart to industry. Albert, you're a VC, and your job is to enable the industry for green transition. Are you also enabling in bridge building with policy?
Sure. I think it would be great to have that bridge built earlier in the process, right? So often it's something like digital product passport. I don't know how much conversation there was in the policy making with people from industry, as opposed to sort of saying, we're going to make the policy, we'll sort of hope it gets adopted, and we'll figure out how it gets adopted. But the point I wanted to come to is, overall, the biggest lack is urgency. It's just, it still feels like the train's already pulling out of the station, and we're still walking up to the station, and we're still all walking and going, yeah, we'll make that train, totally fine, nothing to see here. And I just think, as long as that sense of urgency isn't stated much more clearly. I was on a panel yesterday because we've done some investments in oceans, and if you're looking at what's happening at the actual heat level in the oceans, like 23 is a really, really scary year. It's just like you look at the chart and you look at all the prior years and the lines are here, and then the 23 line is up here. Like the train had left the station. We're still not having that level of urgency that is required, and so I don't think the communication part that I was talking about bringing industry in earlier can happen if we are using essentially what is a all right, we'll try this one. What is essentially sort of a peacetime approach to this problem. I mean, we're still having a peacetime approach to this problem, and that's why I think things are moving really, really slowly and kind of bureaucratically at the end of the day.
Thanks for that. So since Andreas, since we now have the several mentions of digital product passport, also because you're wearing two hats, because you're an entrepreneur yourself, talking about speed and urgencies, sometimes it feels like EU policy can do everything, just not speed. But digital product passport is actually quite fast considering the context. So like, can you demystify digital product passport for us a little bit?
Yes, I have. Can you hear me now? So technology. Um, the digital product pass is an element. It's a predefined data set with a system behind it. I don't want to get more specific. That is supposed to enable consumers, sorters, and lawmakers, provide them with the necessary data for a circular transition. The keyword is data. And to answer your question, we had I'm representing a so-called Surpass project here. So it's surpass.eu in case that you want to hear more. And I was supposed to give hope. This is a successful project, in my opinion. It's my very first one that I worked that close with 3 directorates, with DG Grow, DG Environment, and DG Connect.
DG means Department from the European Commission.
Okay. And there was a huge involvement of the market. I'm the co-sector lead for the textile sector, so they tried to look for generic structures for electronics, batteries, and textile and fashion. Textile will be the next regulated sector. The digital product pass is a critical enabling element in the ESPR legislation, the Eco-Design Directive. And to come from a sort of total different standpoint, even for the Commission, they knew they needed data, which was the mission that is driving me for 4 years now, but they didn't know how. And so they gathered specialists, also in my case with access to the industry. I was a long-time national consulting partner of the German Fashion Association, and involved sort of technical specialists from World Wide Web Consortium to, I don't know, Fraunhofer and Politecnico Milano, with a lot of questionnaires and involvement of the market, really the industry. My 2 messages today, it is, in my opinion, a very successful role model for other ones. So this is the hope part. What I see is, if we talk the industry, particularly in fashion in Europe, we're talking about 40,000 textile and about 90,000 fashion companies. The majority of them, what you believe is fashion with Kering and all the other colleagues, is 0.2% of the market. So there's 11% SMEs, and the majority, more than 85%, have less than 10 people. And so what I can say is the data generation is the critical part, number one. And where we need the support from the policy side in the next years is training, enabling the small companies or the industry itself and the IT providers of the industry who are stuck suddenly by basic developments like semantical web, what we discussed, or blockchain and other basic technologies where they're not prepared at the moment. So this is what we work on. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Also, because in the context is because we're here in the Creative Impact Day, it's like we are specifically focusing on like the creative industry sides, because a digital product passport is batteries, electronic consumer goods, but also textiles, which means fashion. And what we are seeing in this context of the invisible becomes visible is it feels like, especially in the fashion industry, they will get hit by a tsunami because, you know, we're talking about a very unregulated industry. So this is also like our service to the creative industry flag, like something is coming. And the industry has to be prepared. Frederick, I know like with the Open Connector Alliance, this is exactly because you're very, very close to the industry and you have to translate that, what Andreas just said. I mean, how do you do that?
Well, I do agree with what everyone else said here, but one of the problems is that there is some confusion between policy and industry. quite a lot of confusion. Sometimes policy, when it's not working good, comes up with something like Albert kind of hinted at, that you say that we should do this, but they don't think about the practical implementation. And what we see is a lot of times the problems is very practical. And you need to go down on the floor and solve those practical problems, because it doesn't matter if you say that you should have a levitating cost because it's no friction and it's really good. Because if you can't create levitating costs, the policy is quite meaningless. And that's where we try to translate sometimes, both back and forth, trying to explain to the industry why a policy might be good and even might be a business opportunity. Because when it comes to the fashion industry, a lot of these policies are actually a business opportunity. Because they should change. They have 30 to 40% overproduction. That's bad business. They should change. It's better business to be sustainable. And these policies actually, if they can see it from that angle, helping the industry doing better business, which they should. And there's also a sense of urgency that's missing. That I completely agree with Albert, where you feel, but these policies won't affect us today. So sometimes we need to translate, yeah, but this policy will make you have to pay a tax of 177 million or what it might be if you don't comply. You need to translate it into something tangible for the industry, because we are quite surprised, especially when it comes to the fashion industry, and maybe because it's a very unregulated industry that is not used to regulations. They tend to not knowing or ignoring. Well, we take it when it arrives. And that's really the wrong attitude, and especially when it hits you from a financial perspective.
Thank you for that. So we're doing an extra, even broader leap, Eric, since we are not only want to talk about European bubble, but also you're the president of the Europe-Asia Center. You've been the climate minister for Norway, so you're very aware of what's happening in the European zone extended, but especially climate change, it affects all of us, and especially also the textiles fashion industry is everywhere because we're still all very close, right? So when you hear all of this in the rooms where you sit, is there actually an awareness of that tsunami which was just outlined by the speakers before?
First of all, this is really a wonderful event. This is exactly what we need a lot more of. We heard here that there is not enough urgency. Look, every political leader in the world, maybe except Donald Trump, has got it. They understand that climate change is real. Basically, every top leader of every business, Amazon or Apple, Siemens or Volkswagen, Alibaba, Tencent, they all got it. They all understand it. What's really lacking in the world is a similar movement of the people for the planet. Look, in many European nations, there are now more votes to get to oppose climate action than to get it. Why is this? I believe one reason is that the environmentalists, including myself, is making the message in the wrong way. I mean, you have all been listening to endless PowerPoint presentation, so boring that everyone in the room is falling asleep. We have all been listening to this scaremongering message that the world is a horrible place, going to hell. This is not giving the hope and the inspiration to people which we do need. And we speak in a language people out there cannot understand. This is COP28. Well, maybe 1 million people in the world understand COP28. That means there is 8,000 million people out there who do not understand what COP28 means. Maybe 100,000 people in the world understand UNFCCC. Well, it means there is also 8,000 million people out there who don't understand. And if you speak to people in a language they cannot comprehend about issues which they find very theoretical, they will not respond. So we need to change our messaging. And one part of that is to create more joy, more care for the wonderful, beautiful nature, more excitement, and of course fashion is one way, not the only, but one important way of doing that, because people care for fashion. And even here, we get it sometimes wrong. Look, besides China, the biggest provider of garment in the world is Bangladesh. Bangladesh is only in the media when something goes wrong. But look, millions of women in Bangladesh has got a much better life thanks to the garment industry. It's an enormous success. The average economic and social education level in Bangladesh is now above the average for India. That was the nation people, Henry Kissinger said this is the basket case of the world, the hopeless place. Well, it has moved fantastically, and a major reason is the garment industry of Bangladesh. And we have I've spent quite a lot of time with some entrepreneurs from Bangladesh here. They are in the forefront of recycling of cotton, which is so much needed in the world. We cannot just, 99% of all clothes we make are just thrown away. Why don't we start recycling some of them? And Bangladesh is front and center in that. So let's get some of this positive news out there. And look, very soon, of course, whenever you buy a shirt from Bangladesh, there'll be an app saying this is made by some hardworking women in Chittagong, which is the second biggest city in Bangladesh. They have worked hard, their life has been improved, and the environment standards of the place is acceptable, even improving. That not all customers take care of the environment, but sufficient amount do, so that will be an added value for those companies who act responsibly. Finally, if you may I'm very much into the renewable energy industry. The big problem for renewables in the world is not technology, it's all available, it will improve, but it's already there. It's not finances, there is abundance of cash. The big problem is the relationship between business and governments. Simply, government permitting is so slow, simply doesn't happen. It takes a much longer time to get the government permit than to construct offshore wind or to set up massive solar industries. And we cannot work that slow, and then we need a much more detailed debate or partnership between the business and governments, which you are also asking for.
Excellent. Let's go into details. Albert, throwing it back straight into the industry. So, because since we're here to achieve solutions and not only complain about what is wrong, because also, I want you, I'm going to fiercely push you into commitments. So, in that second round, what we heard from Eric is like that, governance and industry have to work together. So, Albert, how can you get industry closer to government?
I agree with Eric that we need a positive vision, that people want a positive vision. I disagree with you that politicians understand how far behind we are or the urgency that's needed. I just think we are in the wrong ballpark of capital allocation to the problem. And yes, permitting, huge issue. I live in the US. Getting anything cited in the US is insanely difficult. Trying to build a new power line in the US is virtually impossible. So that is definitely a part of the problem. But it is still a fundamental part of the problem that politicians are not willing to say how much change is needed and how fast it is needed. And maybe they'd be more willing to say it if there was a positive vision. But if I look at what's happening with entrepreneurs on the ground, there's just a huge inflow of people who used to work in other, areas that want to work on solving climate problems. And I don't think we have all the technological solutions. If you look at the battery storage gap alone, it is absolutely massive. And yes, we're building lithium-ion capacity, but it's not ramping nearly fast enough compared to the renewables ramp. So we also need new technology. So I think if we want the level of activation, whether it's in fashion, whether it's in batteries, that we just need politicians to not sort of be so tentative and be afraid that the voters are not going to like it and be like, I don't want to talk about it, that we need to do more because then I'm not going to get elected because more people are against it than for it. Yeah, we do need this positive vision. And I love your vision of, I want to buy every piece of cloth and know who made it and know where the materials came from. That is a wonderful vision, and we should all work towards that, super urgently. But it's not going to happen unless politicians say, guess what? We're going on more of a war footing, and we're going to require this by next year. Make it happen. Make it happen. That's what we need. We're past the point where, let's figure out how to introduce this in 26 and then roll it out in 28 and then 2030. No more of that. I'm tired of it. Sorry.
Alison,
End of rant.
Alison, how scared are you as a politician?
Well, I just want to make the distinction between national politicians and local politicians, because I actually share the exact same frustrations that you have at local level. And it's not a fashion example, but it's a real energy example. We have built a district heating scheme. We have built a waste to energy facility that opened, I think, 5 years ago, that is fully working, that has the district heating pipes just sitting there. We have no regulator for district heating. The minister has not signed the license, and we cannot move.
Why?
And we are
Why?
being blamed. And it's that I don't honestly know. He's a really good bloody minister, to be honest with you. But and we know it's sitting on his desk because we've asked several times. And I think there is a fear factor there, and it's around, oh, if I do this and it doesn't work out, or if I do this, there is no short-term gain just yet. It's a long-term gain. And I don't think we've got the language as politicians about creating a vision that is 2030, 2040, 2050. Now, we started it this year in Dublin City Council in our draft climate action plan, and we asked headline questions for the public. What's your vision for climate in Dublin for 2030? And we talked about Dublin as a creative city, as a social city, as a resilient city. And it really started a different conversation instead of going down the technical end. But I do think politicians, I don't know even if they're in their head they've got it. I can't feel it from their hearts. But I do know at a local level, when you have communities whose houses have flooded and they call you up, you want to be able to react. Our daily work is face-to-face with communities, whether it be cycle lanes and arguing with motorists that don't want cycle lanes because they want to stay in their car. But there is a language piece there that I think is missing. And I go back to the creatives and creative industries as a vehicle for that conversation. And I think fashion is a really good one. We had a local community group who wanted to do a clothes shop because we've got a very active climate group in this particular community. And they came to us. So we put together a little toolkit. We bought the railings, we bought the hangers, and we literally have that now across the city. So any community who wants to do a circular fashion event can take this toolkit and can take all the practical stuff that they need to put together. So by having that swap shop, you're actually starting a conversation as to why we should not be throwing out fashion or clothes. Like, this was €15 in a secondhand shop. It's there. It's really, really useful to have those conversations. And I think as a politician, and I'm a former mayor that was photographed every single day for a year, by putting on a dress that I bought in a circular economy shop, I am adding value. I'm making a statement that says this is absolutely sustainable fashion. It's actually really nice and comfortable and all the rest. So I think as politicians, we need to be seen not just in what we say and do, but actually walk the walk in our daily lives and lifestyles.
Thank you for that. Frederick, talking about the Open Connector Alliance, is that vision big enough? What is the vision in the fashion industry? Is there a vision? Do they see things like literally vision?
Well, I'm sitting between industry and politics, and that's exactly where Open Connector Alliance is.
Perfect spot.
Yeah, so it's a perfect spot, actually. And I have to comment first on actually what you're saying, because I do agree with you, and I do agree with you, very Scandinavian. But I think the problem here is that politician tends to push the problems at individual companies, saying Nike could fix this. I mean, they have so much money. But this is a systematic error. And there is infrastructure lacking that Nike can't build. They can't build the digital infrastructure for waste handling. That's something that, on a governmental level, in policy, that could create a business opportunity for companies like Nike. But when those initiatives are not there because a lack of sense of urgency, what I think, then you can't push the problem towards Nike. Because Nike don't, going back to what you said, they don't have the vision. They can't have a vision to create the infrastructure and a systematic change across the whole industry. I mean, they could, but they don't have that because it's not built into the system. They're also not used to working with research and development. It's an industry where not a single penny gone into research and development. So for them to start innovating suddenly out of nowhere is completely unheard of. And they never worked with regulations. They never worked with these types of problems before. And there is no infrastructure in place due to the lack of. So I would say there is certainly a lack of vision, guidance, and direction in the fashion industry, which is a big problem.
Andreas, isn't then supposed to be the digital product pass be like the replacement or the guidance for vision? Of like, what shall we do? Is it like that easy to just follow the rules of the digital product pass?
Nope.
Help!
No, it's not. I just estimated while I was listening to my other speakers here. I think the last 4 years, I assume that I talked to about like 1,200 companies from the fashion sector. And I can categorize them in 4 categories. You have, because I think we are talking about a change in mindset if we want to get this forward. We have the religious category. So this is hugging the tree, you know what I mean. Then you have the lean category of people. This is how we started with my company, or my startup, that we were an efficiency initiative, which I like actually the most. This is what I'm still stressing. Then you have the pretenders. This group is significantly getting smaller, and the people who give a crap. So none of this you fix with the digital product pass. Sorry for being that. So this is one facet of the coin. The second one is that you have zombies in the textile industry with companies who are dead but don't know this already. After Corona, with all kind of public funding, as good as that was, this is the reality. This is why we're seeing a major bankruptcy, wave in Germany. By the way, I agree 100% with the local and the sort of not local governments. I'm German, and we invented overregulation. Okay, so we 60% of global literature on taxes comes from Germany. Just to give you mild idea. So this is no. What I like about this, so we have companies who are dead, who are struggling, and others who are really willing. And I think we have the saying in Germany that you have to get the people where they stand and move them. The digital product pass is a very valuable tool set. But I had 2 talks that I stuck in my head the last 3 weeks. One was with the CEO of a brand that I saw in the Dubai Mall here, who said literally, what else shall we do? And on one hand, I can understand that. On the other hand, I told him bluntly, I said, I have a child and I will have grandchildren in the near future. And I'm not taking this, no matter how stressed he feels or not, this is not my problem. I told him this frank up. I said, we have to change something, and if we don't change something, there will be nothing changed. It's pretty simple. The second thing is from data pool provider who is system critical for the whole shoe sector in Germany, where I had a talk last week. He said, Schneider, I'm divided. On one hand, I see that we need digital product pass, new standards, new technology data. But my shareholders hold me back and say, hey, don't too far forward and so on. So there is a lot of hesitance. What I like and wish for is that the politicians, this is something that we didn't have in Germany, this is why we're up to the head in mud at the moment with overregulation and all. I don't spare this, I don't want to spoil the meeting here. So I want a clear statement from politics to push that, number one. And to provide sort of the tool set for the biggest transition the textile sector has ever seen. So this is my wish that I can formulate. And digital product pass is just a tool set. It doesn't change a thing, but it's very important, because you know the saying that what I cannot measure, I cannot manage. And data is the key to the whole transition, and if we don't work on that, so then all the other things are not worth it. So it is a complicated topic, long story short.
Damn, and here we thought we will have a quick, strong answer just after 40 minutes of discussion. It seems far too complicated, and we have to continue the conversation.
I just think we lack the imagination of what is possible. And it's strange that we lack this imagination because we just went through COVID and we saw what was possible when there's a fast-moving crisis. Like we went from no testing to everybody testing. Because it was a fast-moving crisis. This is a slow-moving crisis, and we're just pretending it's slow-moving, but it's actually getting away from us. And we just lack the imagination of saying, no, it could happen tomorrow. You can require this for every product and just make it so. Consumers would love it, right? Consumers would love to be able to see where their stuff comes from. We just lack the imagination, and we lack the urgency, and that's bullshit. Sorry.
I also think, I just need to add to that, I think we lack guts sometimes. Because if you look at the fashion industry, for example, we know the starting point, we know how to do it. But putting money into doing it, someone needs to do that. And that takes a little bit of guts, which I feel is lacking. Because if we know that we can reduce the overproduction in the fashion industry, we know how, it's simple knowledge transfer, and still it's not happening, then something is missing.
Eric, and also we are starting the final round before we're going to QA, so I'll challenge you to yes, we see we can't have a quick fix. We will have to continue this conversation. I feel like we have to, invite you to Brussels to do yet again another roundtable. I just talked with Mazamba that we need to also sit down. And in January, we said with our creative task force, it's like that we're going really down to the solutions. So yes, even though we failed in this round in 40 minutes, fix everything, but this is the beginning of a conversation. So Eric, from a political, how to dance with zombies.
I will continue to bring optimism into the debate because the pessimism is a very Western perspective. Look, 10 years ago, if anyone asked me, where shall I go to get the best information, best practice for the environment, I would always say you should go to Brussels, and if not, you should go to Berlin or to France, or to Paris. Because at the end of the day, European Union is the driver of the global environment debate. If anyone's asked me today, I would say you should go to Beijing, you should go to Delhi, and you should go to Jakarta. I guess you are from Indonesia, from your clothing. Look, last year, Indonesia, the second biggest rainforest nation in the world, has zero deforestation. What a wonderful achievement in the combination of good policies of the Jokowi government and action of the big players, the palm oil and the paper and pulp companies and all the other companies in the Indonesian industry. That was partnership between industry and government, which we lack in Europe. We are far behind. One nation alone, China, is 60 to 80% of all green energy and all green technologies in the entire world. Look at this COP, this conference of the parties. 136 nations made a very important pledge. We said we will triple our green energy in the next 2 decades. But one nation alone, China, is much more than all these 136 combined. Just that we in the West haven't really realized it yet. And let me make the comparison between the West, particularly the United States, and India, because China has a very different governance system, but they are totally dominant. I mean, 80% of all solar industry in the world is in one country alone, is in China. 80% of all new hydropower is in China. 70% of all electric batteries are in China. 60% of all electric cars are in China. And I can go on and go on. But India has a democratic system exactly the same as the United States. There is no central politician in India ever who has doubted the climate conversation or the climate science. No one in the opposition is blaming Prime Minister Modi for going green. None of the state leaders, and there are many, many states in India, much bigger than any state in the United States, none of them are saying that we should not act on climate. All are about how to act. And there is no one in media really questioning this. By the way, there was no one questioning vaccines in India either. Not one pop star, not one Bollywood star, not one cricket star, not one central politician questioning this global science, while the United States, and sorry to say also Europe, we are full of it. So maybe we should also consider why we are lagging so much behind. I mean, China is none, Indonesia none, in India is none. Why we allow Asia to lead us if we don't get up very early in the morning in the United States and in Europe, they will overtake the entire green space of the world, meaning China, India, Indonesia, and a few other, Vietnam, a few other Asian nations.
Thank you very much for the roadmap. So Brussels next, then Paris, Berlin, Beijing, and Jakarta. Albert, I see you want to talk.
No, I agree 100%. I think I was very concerned about India's attitude towards climate until a couple of years ago, and they've done a 180, and at scale, and it's very impressive. Again, I think it shows what is possible.
Frederick, last words, and don't feel pressured about the positivity. More realistic.
No, but I think there is positivity because we know how to do it. We just need to figure out where to start. I think if you look at the fashion industry, they are confused. They don't. I agree with you. They want to change, but it's very confusing because they don't know the starting point. If you sit with too many problems, it's like you have a super messy room, and it's sort of easier to just lay down on the sofa because you don't know where to start. So I think it's just give them a starting point and help them with the starting points. And it doesn't really matter where we start, I would say. Just that we start. That would be my last.
Andreas, start and where?
I think I tried to cut the elephant in pieces in my textile world as I understand it. I think this should be a starting point for industry, politician, regular exchange, particularly with focus on fashion, because I think we need this. There will be a lot of unforeseen developments the next 24 months, and I think it pays to meet more or less on a regular basis to learn from each other and to join forces for a better future.
Alison, what are you going to tell your colleagues after this?
I think we need another string to our sustainability training, which we roll out regularly. We know what's coming down with the European Strategy for Sustainable and Circular Textiles. So maybe we just need to leapfrog over national directives and regulations and start engaging more at local level. From a financial perspective, you've just inspired me there. You know, it might be possible to reduce commercial rates for fashion houses or that have sustainable products, circular products. So we're again sending a message that this is important. We're going to support you in that trajectory.
Excellent. We will keep track of that in the next meeting in Brussels. So thank you so much for this very straightforward candid talk. The applause is yours. We do have 10 minutes for questions, so you can keep. Okay, good.
I do not have a question. I have a comment. My name is Masamba Choi. I'm the project executive of the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. And I would like to insist on what you have said, Eric. What makes very special this Global Innovation Hub is that we don't want to leverage innovation and focus on the problem. We want to use innovation to build the future we want for our grandchildren. It's more about how innovation can contribute to providing flourishing life to the many people in a regenerative world. And I fully agree with you that most of the time what we are seeing, people are focusing on the problem, the collapse, what will happen if you do not do anything. We do not have a lot of stories, a narrative that will make people feel the compelling world that we want to build. And this is only what can create common sense of purpose. Somebody told me yesterday that among all the sessions that we have here, the ones that are the most followed in the net are those that are focusing on possible solutions. It means that out there, people are desperately looking for something that can give hope. And it's why we are mobilizing all the UN organizations. Currently, we had the meeting 2 days ago with our sister organization to explore to what extent we could produce something that changed the narrative. Climate movie that will not focus on the collapse, but that will paint the future we would like to build, flourishing life future that can give hope. We want to play on the positive emotion of hope and not on the negative emotion of anxiety and fear. So I'm looking forward to collaborate in the fashion industry is a very important, let's say, leverage point, the culture and creative industry, to contribute in building this narrative that can give hope to the many people, particularly to the youth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have to continue on that. Also, like, the thing is, like, the reason why we are focusing a lot on fashion is because we do have data from United Nations on the carbon footprint of the fashion industry, which is 10% globally. But also the thing is, like, is that the right data? We don't even know. Like, do we have data on, like, all of the other rest of the culture creative industries? Like, what is the footprint of the movie industry, the music industry? And, you know, so again, this is about that we have to make the invisible visible. So, like, this is something about data gathering. We will have a narrative conversation later on, also where we bring all of the other creative industries together. It's like that we can focus on the fashion industry more because we have at least some sort of data. In order to do this systemically with all of the rest of the culture creative industry means it's like we also have to continue the transparency. And then also because the digital product passport, for instance, will also affect, of course, all of the industries. Not only the creatives, not only batteries, not only electronic consumer goods, everything, right? So, like, we have to be able to copy and paste the frameworks and the data visualization. So this is not only entirely focusing on fashion, it has to go beyond, but we have to start somewhere. And to that point also is because we had a conversation about, as like with our CEO Kirsten Dunlop, who you will see later on in the session, is like we need to keep people in the room to continue the conversation. We need to go deep. And because of that, the session after this one is even more specifically about fashion. It's called How to Clothe 10 Billion People in a Sustainable, Non-Harmful Way. And we will dig even deeper. We have somebody from Jakarta, we have the OR Foundation, we will talk about landfills, and we even have brave fashion brands. Because let me tell you, last year we tried to invite fashion brands, and nobody picked up the phone. And we have the list who didn't even show up. Just talking about data, right? But we have time for one or two more questions. I don't know who was first. So you have a signal color. See, it works.
Oh. Sorry, everyone. Hi, I'm Liv from Fashion Revolution. This isn't, again, a question, but maybe it will turn into a question. But I think, someone on the panel said we don't know where to start when it comes to fixing the fashion industry and innovation. And I think one of the key things is being transparent about brands' purchasing practices. Brands have immense purchasing power, which means it translates to them having immense responsibility to grow the availability of clean renewable energy in producing countries. And a good place to start is purchasing practices, so paying higher prices to their suppliers to enable living wages, but to also enable them to invest in technology like waterless dyeing, electrified boilers, and so on. So yeah, I think a great start would be being transparent about those purchasing practices and how the wages you pay to suppliers translate into livable wages for garment workers. I think in addition to this, when we talk about the digital product passport, what kind of data do we need to be transparent about that? Well, I think a good start would be, what is the prices paid to suppliers per garment? So we can figure out, are workers earning a living wage? Other things, when we talk about waste colonialism and extended producer responsibility, that would be, the date that the product is manufactured. So we know how quickly the clothes are ending up as waste. So we know how quickly they're moving through the cycle. We need to talk about durability of items, and not because they're made from sustainable materials or durable materials, because we know that polyester is a durable material because it lives forever. So we need to be transparent about how much suppliers are being paid. We need to be transparent about when our clothes are manufactured so we know how long they're staying in the system, and we can create eco-modulated fees when it comes to extended producer responsibility. But I'll just round off by saying that just 12% of the brands we review in the Fashion Transparency Index, that's 250 brands, just 12% of them are transparent about responsible code of purchasing conduct. So sorry, that wasn't a question, but just some ideas on what could be included in a digital passport.
Thank you very much. Anyone who wants to respond to that? It kind of feels like once you look into this is like all of a sudden an entire ocean of issues and possibilities is showing up. Anyone wants to respond?
I'm one of the 6 people who wrote the first data draft for the Digital Product Pass, and I'm sorry to tell you that CSR data is at the moment not included, which makes me very unhappy. This is my private comment, but it is a starting point. I cannot see environmental friendly products without paying the people properly. But this, and I'm not alone with that, good luck. But there will be a mandatory part of data and there will be some kind of voluntary. And it's just a starting point to build up an infrastructure that will allow in the future, and this is my hope, to also transport durability data and others. That's a big animal, by the way, we can discuss later. But it's a starting point, it's a good starting point. No data, no transition. Yeah?
That sounds like a t-shirt. Frederick?
Yeah, I do agree with what you said. I think one of the problems that we might not talk about directly is that the problem with the fashion industry is the number of garments we produce. It's just we produce too much clothes, and that's the problem. And if we're going to lower that, we also need to focus on new business models. So saying that they need to pay more, they really don't, actually. If you have 30 to 40% overproduction, if you start by reducing that, because that's a cost, you're actually not paying more per garment in the end. So it's actually not an increased cost. It's even better business. That's my point. Yeah. I just wanted to point it out that it's actually not a higher cost in the end.
But what I hear is also there's like something, we're touching on is like the issue on human rights violations, because that is also like a not acknowledged cost on this as well. It's like that because we had like a roundtable in Brussels, is actually on European level, the legal framework for human rights is actually far more advanced than all of the sustainability regulations. So that will hit first. And again, for industries who haven't been visible and under-regulated, they will get very much affected by human rights violations legislation first. Because we've seen that actually, because Germany is kind of like the guinea pig for the digital product passport. It's called Lieferkettengesetz. And what we saw is like that institutions, human rights institutions, actually started to sue companies all across industry because they couldn't provide transparent data. And the argument of we don't know and we can't is simply not valid.
I would even add to that you can't have 30 to 40% overproduction in industry if you don't have forced labor. So they go together, because you can't order stuff and just take 30 to 40% overproduction unless the cost is so low that you don't care, and which means that it have to be linked to forced labor. That's at least my opinion.
And there's quite a few significant cost blocks in the value chain that are not addressed at the moment. We have in our system currently 202 different fashion-related certificates. This is totally nonsense. We have auditing fatigue as a new industry term. Totally crazy. So if we get these complexities out of the value chain, there's enough money to pay the workers. Yeah, I mean, there's 37 multi-billion-dollar businesses, and really they do a good job for auditing companies. SGS by itself makes 7 billion euros revenue in auditing. This is zero value created. This is with your blockchain. So there are technology we will see a lot of changes to the better. Yeah, but we have to stick with it and continue this dialogue here.
Continue the dialogue and stay positive. Thank you very much. One final applause. Thank you. We have to continue this conversation, and we will. Please stay here. We have our next roundtable with the wonderful... Oh, yes, and we have to do pictures. Yes, absolutely. Please stay here while we are rotating the next panel. Yes, we will talk about even more, going deeper into like what does it actually mean to clothe 10